Again, what you see behind me, I'm still in the town of Westchester, Pennsylvania, or Turk's Head, it was called at the time. Now this was like Kennett Square. It was a crossroads community. It was a farming community outside of town. They would have had the same type buildings as Kennett Square did. They would have had older structures from the 1760s here. The buildings that you see today here are Civil War and 1840 type buildings. They didn't exist during the battle. This was generally an area that roads came into in different areas, and it was on the Paoli Pike or near it. The Paoli Pike went through the center of town. This was another direct route north of Philadelphia. It didn't go directly into Philadelphia. It went towards the Schuylkill River, near City Line Avenue is today. This was a main artery, and Washington knew that. He had information that he could get to Philadelphia or Reading to the Great Valley. Now the Great Valley today is north of this position, about 20 miles to my north. It's a ridge, it's 2 mountain ranges. It runs for about 70 miles up and down from Lancaster all the way to Valley Forge to about Conshohocken. Now the Great Valley was a depression. There's no river there. It's just a natural fold in the land, and it was easy for Washington to move his troops through the Great Valley. Now, again about the Turk's Head, is that this area was definitely involved in the battle. They could hear what's going on. The inhabitants knew that the British were in the area. There's a tavern. It's called Martin's Tavern. It's about 3 miles to the west. That's a tavern that was used for communications. They used it for communications to Washington. They told Washington conflicting reports from Martin's Tavern about the flanking position of the British. And during the morning, there was a horseman. He came from Martin's Tavern. He was a loyalist. He gave Washington bad orders. He said that there wasn't any men flanking the army. And also there were loyalists that also came and gave him conflicting orders that they saw the flanking maneuver 3 miles to the west. Now here there was another tavern. We were talking about it earlier. It was called the Turk's Head. There was loyalists there. They didn't like the British. They wanted to be farming Quakers. They were in this area also. Now this area also, like I was saying, was used as a hospital. They had to bring the wounded in here. They brought the dead here to be buried. Now outskirts of town are still rural today. Here it's loud, it's noisy. The area is a bustling area now. But like I was saying, generally it would have been a farming community of Quakers outside of town. Now about the Great Valley. Now about 3 days after the occupation, Cornwallis went to a place called Aston, Pennsylvania. They called it Ashland back then. He took about 1,000 men. He was looking at Washington. Washington at that time was stationed. He was stationed over in Chester. They took a group of individuals and they were watching Washington. They kept an eye on him. They wanted to see where he was going after the battle. Now, during this time, the locals were getting upset. There was conflicting reports that people hated the British in the area. They didn't want them here. And what they had to do, they had to stop the raiding parties. They had to stop going into people's homes, taking their livestock, their sheep, their hay and wheat. They needed this. It was September. The winter was coming. So, orders were placed. I don't know who placed the orders. Had to be high up on the rank. That Lord Cornwallis in Aston was not allowed to make raiding parties. They stayed in the area to observe. They didn't raid the outside communities. So during this time, 2 soldiers, they just went to somebody's house. It was a grenadier and basically an enlisted man. They went into somebody's house, they raided. They did the daughter's gunner. They put him on top of the gun and they beat them. And then after they beat them, they hung them in front of their army. 2 men died in Aston because they went on raiding parties. Now Howe and Cornwallis at this time, they didn't want that. It was done and over with. They had the provisions for the battle. They didn't need any more provisions. They knew where they were going to be. They took Philadelphia. They were going towards Philadelphia. They weren't going to be. They weren't going to be in the middle of a field in the wintertime. The line broke at Brandywine, and they were up going towards Philadelphia. Now Philadelphia is about 50 miles to the north, and they were on their way. They knew where they were going to stay. They were going to take Philadelphia. No more raiding parties. They were going to have fun in Philly. They were going to drink. They were going to party. But where was Washington going to go? He needed to restock his army. He fought a battle. He lost men. He lost his cannons. So basically, he had to head up towards Reading, Pennsylvania. Now, Reading is over the Great Valley. He had to go through this valley to my west. He had to go into the Great Valley. He had to go down Paoli Pike. He went to Paoli Pike and he broke his army into two formations. Anthony Wayne's Pennsylvanians, who got destroyed at Brandywine, stayed on the Paoli Pike. They stayed near the Anthony Wayne Tavern today in the Paoli battlefield. Now we'll go into that later in another video, but the rest of Washington's army had to retreat and go over the Great Valley to Reading, Pennsylvania.